Autumn in the Shawnee National Forest, where hills roll under hardwoods turning from one season to another. This canopy of color is what visitors come to see, not this. Last summer, this other use of the forest, logging, brought protesters in place of sightseers. The Shawnee National Forest has become a mini laboratory for a debate in western states, where timber is to local economies what king coal has been to southern Illinois. Here, timber is also a natural resource, but what kind? Habitat or commodity? Or must that be a choice?
Go on, leave!
Such questions made it a summer of discontent in the Shawnee National Forest. In California, environmental activists camped out for a redwood summer. Here at the Fairview timber sale, a ridge away from the Little Grand Canyon, it was a hardwood summer in the Shawnee. So you've been out here how long now?
For 35 days.
Camping out right down here?
Earth First has been maintaining an occupation and a vigil, a 24-hour-a-day vigil for Fairview woodlands.
Well, let's take a walk down and see where you've been camping out here. Now, you've renamed this. This was built as a logging road, but you're calling it what?
The people have redesignated it as a hiking trail, camping area. It's the highest use of this area for the greatest number of people for the longest amount of time.
And the waiting period that you're here, you've been here for a certain amount of time, you're waiting on a court decision.
Yes, the federal judge is ruling on whether the Forest Service was really illegal when they prepared this sale. That's our contention. That's the documentation that Race has laid out.
And you've been waiting since you had your day in court?
Yes, he put a restraining order in place at that time. We thought it was a 7-day restraining order, and the cutting would start right after that 7 days. But we moved over here ready to actually meet with the chainsaw people and say no. But it didn't work out that way.
One of the things you had to do in the court case is establish that you had standing in this, and your standing was that you were citizens who use this forest, this part of the forest?
Exactly. The 4 plaintiffs stated they've been using this area since the late 70s, that their personal enjoyment of the area would be destroyed and impaired by what the Forest Service is trying to do here.
So this is your parlor, your living room?
That's right. Actually, this is the base camp. The parlor is out under the canopy, our porch.
Members and friends of Earth First set up a tent smack dab in the middle of a logging road. This was to be their base camp for a summer-long vigil. So this is where people hang out while they're waiting for the decision, is that it?
Living room and kitchen.
Yeah.
Right.
How many have been here the entire 35 days? Anybody?
Yep.
Yeah? And the rest of you, a day, a week at a time?
2 weeks.
Week and a half.
I missed 3 days.
You missed 3 days out of 35? That's
3 or 4.
Well, let's go around real quick and see where everybody's from. Are you Southern Illinoisans or are you from somewhere else?
Missouri.
Missouri? St.
Outside St. Louis, yeah.
I'm from Waterloo, which is southern Illinois.
Waterloo,
So
Illinois.
about 80 miles from here.
Columbia, Missouri.
Edwardsville.
Granite City.
St. Louis.
Carbondale.
Carbondale. So we got one Carbondale, several Southern Illinoisans, and people from Missouri and all around. Why come to a place like this for a summer when you could out be, earning money or whatever?
Because if we don't come now, then there won't be anything to come for later. Got to do it now.
Because the forest will be gone, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Earth Firsters camped at Fairview to block the timber sale temporarily, while a local group, RACE, the Regional Association of Concerned Environmentalists, went to federal court to block the sale permanently. An appeals court in Chicago denied RACE's request in November, 2 months after Earth First broke camp.
The Earth First people were there in support of our position on the Shawnee. These are caring people that believe that there isn't a place for this large-scale commercial cutting on the Shawnee, on our public lands. And what I'd like to say specifically is if it wasn't for these people in camp there for 90 days, Fairview would have been cut right now. We were fighting it through the legal system, but if it weren't for those Earth First people out there in camp, they would have cut Fairview. And that's the bottom line.
John Wallace was the Earth Firster who organized the encampment.
Earth First is more of a direct action group, whereas the RACE people, the Regional Association of Concerned Environmentalists who are filing the suit, tend to work more within the system. And so combining the two is really, you know, a magnificent, you know, combination.
I personally called John Wallace and asked him to come down here when we found out that we were losing in federal court and we were trying to get into the United States of Appeal Court. I personally asked John to set up a 24-hour vigil, like a strike line, at the gate to Fairview. And they came down and looked at it and decided that they would set up a tent, and the first thing I know, there's 100 people standing in the road. So I say God bless them. No, race didn't do it. Earth First didn't do it by themselves. The people are taking back their forests, and the people are doing it.
So what's so special about this tree?
This is JJ, one
You've
of our...
named your trees?
Well, actually not me. The new school in Carbondale adopted this tree. They received a 5x7 photograph of this tree, a compass-marked map for where exactly it was. They hiked down here, found their tree, named it JJ, put a sign on it that said, "Whoever cuts this tree will be cursed forever." So when the Forest Service came in and remarked the sale for the group selection cut, they put an official plaque on this tree, and JJ is saved. But now JJ is our representative tree. He's saying, "Please save all my neighbors."
Saving trees is not unprecedented in the Shawnee. Timber sold in Cave Valley, not far from Fairview, was home to habitat identified as rare by university researchers.
When they decided to cut Cave Valley, they blundered into one area that had enough scientific information on it to prove it was an outrage, and also happened to be an area that was surrounded by a bunch of people who loved the woods so much they didn't care what it took to dedicate their lives to stop it.
We realized the mistake. We pulled the sale back, reanalyzed, and said, "You're right. Further analysis has shown that we can't do this," and we withdrew that sale.
Cave Valley was the first sold timber sale that was ever canceled, and it was a direct result of us forming RACE. And of course, that's where this whole grassroots environmental movement here in Southern Illinois got started, right here. In fact, right here at this house, really, when Bill and I first started talking about it. And the Sierra Club, unfortunately, had completely abdicated the responsibility that they should have had to the people who lived here, and they just went about their merry way of compromising, being polite, and working with the Forest Service. And we found that that just wouldn't work, so we had to, when the Sierra Club signed a document agreeing to let the Forest Service clear-cut Cave Valley, we had to set up our own organization. We had to split ways with Sierra Club, with the Forest Service, and become very, very vocal, very aggressive grassroots activists.
When they say, well, it'll live till 300 years old, but after 100 years, then it starts to rot out in the middle and it's no longer.
I say thank God, because you're not going to have a complex, biologically mature forest without having the decaying wood. The soil in a forest is not like the soil in a cornfield. And when they tell you, you know, it's just like corn. It grows up, you harvest it, that's what they say all the time. It's not. They say that trees are a renewable resource, and they try to extrapolate that and say forests are a renewable resource, and it's not true. A tree is a renewable resource, but when you wipe out the forest, when you extract the timber, and the way you do it destroys the forest, that forest is not going to come back. And you've got to have those decaying trees to develop that very unique sort of ecosystem that supports its life. If it didn't take all that very unique part, then this wouldn't be a unique place.
What do you think about cutting a tree that's been here for 120 years maybe, and you're going to cut it in 3-4 minutes?
Well, the tree is mature, and you got to look at it. There's a lot more trees going to grow now. The young trees are going to have a lot better chance of growing once the big trees are, you know, don't shade them. And this big tree here is drawing a lot of the goodies out of the ground for the little trees to get. Because now the little trees will grow a lot faster too once this mature tree is gone.
You don't want to stop and say grace over it or anything before you cut it, huh?
I never thought of it that way, no.
How many trees a day do you cut?
You know, basically around 70.
Well, here's one more.
Okay.
Have at it. In 3 minutes, what had taken 120 years to grow comes crashing down. Brian Understall doesn't view this as the destruction of a forest, but as its salvation. So this is what you're looking for. This is a good example, a good
This
tree?
is a prime red oak. This is a beautiful species. It's long, tall, clear, has little or no taper.
The Forest Service agreed to limit clear cutting. It went to a method called group selection, harvesting all of the trees over a smaller area, about 2 acres instead of, say, 20 or more. Brian Understall showed us one of these newer cuts.
This is a group selection cut right here, and now we've removed all the mature trees, and the Forest Service will now come in and cut down the remaining trees. If you look about, all you're going to see is sugar maple, some elm, some sassafras, and dogwood, and so none of it has any value for wildlife. So they're going to come in here and cut everything else down to allow the sunlight to hit the forest floor to allow for regeneration of oak and hickory.
How does that differ from a clear cut?
It really doesn't differ from a clear cut because it's the same principle, only in a group cut, it's smaller area, and you've got more trees closer to the perimeter so that the acorns and the seeds can come off of the trees outside of the group, and they will regenerate the area.
So you could call that a patch clear cut?
That could be another term for it, right.
Right now, by Forest Service handbooks, group selection can be up to 2 acres. I think sometimes what the problem is, I think some people have a hard time visualizing what is an acre on the ground. You know, and it's not exact, but it's very close. We try to tell people, imagine a football field. That is 1 acre.
The first timber sale that used the new group selection method was called Town Hall in Jackson County, west of Lake Kincaid. Environmentalists think it's a good example of what was wrong with the new technique. An older stand of relatively unbroken forest is now home to a series of large openings, patch clear cuts.
Like that town hall thing, for example. All right, to all intents and purposes, that's just pure out and out clear cutting. That's not even patch cutting. It's too big for patch cutting.
Dr. Leon Minkler developed group selection as an environmentally sensitive method of timber harvest while he was working on the Shawnee at the Kaskaskia Experimental Forest in Pope County. Environmentalists and a handful of eco-foresters like Dr. Minkler are no longer alone in their call for change. Last summer, the National Research Council, an arm of the National Academy of Sciences, issued this report, Forestry Research, a Mandate for Change. Current land use practices and policies cause unacceptably high damage, the report said, and it called for leadership to close the gap between society's needs and forestry research.
We're just a little slow with catching up with what society would like us to be doing.
Resolving conflicting interests will be no easy task, as we saw in the Shawnee National Forest last summer. An environmental movement energized by what it sees as abuse of the land, such as timber harvest at Town Hall, was and will be ready to take a stand.
I was walking along in the Shawnee, so green, happened upon this god-awful scene. Area so suited for songbird flight, with stumps and brambles, it's time to fight. It's time to fight now, it's time to fight. No more compromises, no more sleepless nights. Youth needs her freedom, standing in the light. Praise the hardwoods, it's time to fight. Praise the hardwoods, it's time to fight.
By late summer, the showdown at Fairview had come to a head. The population of protesters at the Earth First encampment grew as reinforcements were recruited. As the time approached for crews to improve the logging road into the timber sale area, some were prepared to put their bodies between the bulldozers and the forest.
How deep are you?
Up to the necks.
Pretty deep.
We're in up to our necks.
What's the battle plan here?
I'm here just bearing witness and just seeing what's going to happen. I'm just using the Forest Service as a multiple use. This is one of my multiple uses.
The Forestry Service and the government want to, have told us that we can no longer stay in our public forest. That, they have a better idea of what to do with the forest than the people of Illinois do. And I personally don't really want to leave that much. I like it here. I like the trees here. And I think all the other creatures of the forest like the trees here. And I think this is a good way of making my point to them that maybe there's a few people out there that do care about the trees more than they claim we do. I know that everybody that I've talked to around here does.
Going camping for a weekend is one thing. Spending an entire summer in the woods as a political protest is something else. For some, like Jan Wilder Thomas, it meant leaving the family at home. 13-year-old Sage Thomas understood what her mother felt she had to do.
These big trees have to be saved for me and my children, if I have any, and she knows that. And of course, she's not only saving them for me, she's saving them for all the children. And then if we don't start saving some of them, there's not going to be any left. We have to take a stand somewhere, and right here's a good place.
You said we were doing it. Don't back it out now.
Somebody gave us some heavy dope, I guess. Something in the coffee this morning.
We weren't in me and
I bet you've never seen a pair of stupid grown men in a hole before, have you?
I just like to say that all these people here really love the forest, and they're trying to save it the best way they can, as like Aaron and Bill in the ground. They're willing to make big sacrifices for the big trees. Sometimes when I am far away, I'm afraid to come. Afraid that when I come to you, that I will find you gone. That I will find a logging crew is tearing into you. Oh, you were there for me, and I'll be there for you. So I'll write my congressmen, I'll speak to those in power. But when it comes the time to stand, it comes the final hour. When the men are closing in, I'll be there with you. Oh, you were there for me, and I'll be there.
Being there meant not only at Fairview, but also at public meetings, like the one Congressman Glenn Pichard held after the New Perspectives tour. Many people had a chance to speak their minds there. Earth Firsters, members of RACE and the Sierra Club, and some members of the public, like this hunter, who found more bones to pick with the environmentalists than the Forest Service.
And I'm helping paying for the Shawnee. And there's thousands and thousands of hunters. And what I see is a small group of people handcuffing the forester.
We've got a chance here to send a message to the nation on how our public lands should be managed. We're asking for a total ban on all commercial cutting in the Shawnee National Forest now. Thank God you've removed Lake Kincaid from the list, and McCormick Hill or Hayes Bay, whatever. You still want to cut Cripps Bend, Otter Salvage, Fairview, Burner Hill, Whoopie Cat this year. 14 million board feet you promised to the timber industry this year. At the same time, you're talking about managing for wildlife and recreation. Well, folks, these are acres that belong in the wildlife recreation base.
That shift from timber to recreation has already been documented by the Forest Service in this long-range planning assessment. They show how the American public will be demanding more recreational opportunities in the next 20 to 50 years, particularly for hiking, backpacking, and sightseeing. But they also document an increasing demand for wood products. They say that more acres of national forest will have to be entered to keep supply up, but that will run counter to the environmental protection trend, and that will mean less timber supply. If the trend away from clear-cutting becomes a reality, another problem might get worse: more roads. So if you like the woods and want other people to share the woods and come out, what's wrong with a road like this that takes you right into the heart of the woods?
It takes out the canopy. There's no canopy here.
And the canopy is important for songbirds?
Very, very important, because cowbirds come in where there's open canopy and nest in songbirds, or lay their eggs in songbirds' nests, and then that kills the baby songbirds.
Here's the culprit, a female cowbird, which Dan Roby, an avian ecologist with the Cooperative Research Wildlife Lab at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, says is the nest pirate of the Shawnee, a parasite of a bird that freeloads off other birds.
Yeah, brown-headed cowbirds are obligate brood parasites, so it means they never build their own nests, they never raise their own young, they always lay their eggs in the nest of another species of bird. And many of the hosts of this parasite are neotropical migrants, birds that spend our winter in the tropics, Central America, South America, the Caribbean, and then they breed in North America. So when they come north to breed, they frequently find this species waiting for them as a potential host. And some neotropical migrants have extremely high parasitism rates by this species. Wood thrushes, for example, in Shawnee National Forest, 96% of all the wood thrush nests have cowbird eggs in them, and some of them have as many as 8 cowbird eggs in a single wood thrush nest.
At that rate, decline of the wood thrush, vireos, and other neotropical songbirds may be inevitable, thanks to this member of the blackbird family.
I think the cowbird parasitism is so prevalent in Shawnee National Forest now that just changing forest management practices is not going to have a dramatic impact on those rates of parasitism. I think forest interior songbirds in the Shawnee are going to continue to experience high cowbird parasitism rates regardless of how timber is harvested in the Shawnee. We're at a point now where cowbird populations are so high, so dense, that it doesn't matter where a forest interior songbird goes in the Shawnee, it still has a high chance of being parasitized.
Whether or not changing forest management will affect the cowbird problem, the result is a clear indication of why forest fragmentation is itself a serious problem. Building roads that fragment the forest doesn't make much sense, environmentalists say, particularly when they subsidize the timber industry at the expense of taxpayers. Roads are the big issue, and loggers say these roads do provide a public benefit.
Most use of the forest isn't through hiking and hunting, it's through driving through with your vehicles and sightseeing, seeing the fall colors, the chance to see a deer. That's what these roads are used for more than anything.
Roads like this one up here?
This road right beside us up here, that road has allowed hunters to come back here and camp, sightseers to come back here and see the forest. Most people really don't want to climb these hills in the summer. They like to drive through it, though, and look at it.
Environmentalists don't need to hear that from loggers to object to spending federal dollars on logging roads instead of habitat protection.
When is the funding going to be put into wildlife and recreation? Is that logging road budget going to be cut?
The Congress right now is going through a series of decisions on reevaluating the T-Spires program, which, as you know, is the program that determines what constitutes below and above cost sales. They are advocating that the Forest Service take another look at that to see that it more accurately reflects the real cost of timber sales in the forests of this country.
Congress has yet to decide whether, as our congressman advocates, the entire cost of building roads and other factors be figured into the cost of federal timber. But Congress has decided a related issue. The Office of Management and Budget wanted to try an experiment, eliminate below-cost timber sales, and invest new money in developing recreational facilities. But senators and representatives from western states, where timber is king, killed the proposal. The new directions we're feeling here in southern Illinois are blocked by older motivations. And as a nation, we cling to clear-cutting. Well, why do you think that we are mistreating our forest? Why would a whole nation of people ever get to the point where we'd do that? Money. What was that?
Money. Money. Man, you've lived long enough to know that money rules the damned earth. You know, it's greed and ignorance, you see.
This is a very good place to talk about conscience. This is our church.
Let's lay off the pious price hiking and admit that trees are trees and money's money. You folks stand to make $1 million.
You're right. Some trees are trees.
An old debate? You bet. The struggle to relate God's work to the almighty dollar has been going on, oh, forever maybe. at least since Kirk Douglas tried to buy the redwoods from Patrice Wymore in The Big Trees.
Ever seen anything more beautiful?
Never.
Certainly there's enough timber around here without you destroying these.
I live by the board foot.
The people have to realize that their forests have been very badly treated in the past, and that it's unethical from a land ethics standpoint, the way Aldo Leopold, do you ever read any of Leopold's work? Brought it out. And some people even carry it to a religious standpoint, that it's not even a religious thing to do to abuse the earth.
When I was down, I came to you. You held me in your being. I see your face so wild and pure in every mountain stream. But when the forest lies in ruins, then who will say what's true? Oh, you were there for me. I'll be there for you.
For Bill Cronin, the forest is most valuable as a place to enjoy nature. That's why he chose to live in the woods.
I like to hunt, I like to be out in the woods, and yeah, I specifically wanted land that bordered up to the National Forest so I could wander off into the woods and enjoy being in the woods. And that's kind of the ironic part is after I moved here, they started trying to cut the woods down around me.
The people don't want this to go on. Period. Stop the madness, stop the cutting, cut the deficit.
Well, the first thing I'd say is watch what we do rather than what we say. They have a right to expect good stewardship of their lands. And I would say they're going to have just a little bit of patience because the proof of the pudding, so to speak, is in what happens on the land.
So why should we believe that this new perspective is going to be anything except a slight change in semantics and the rhetoric in order to continue to circumvent the will of the people and to violate both the letter and the spirit of the law? We don't trust the bastards. It's that simple.
Even woods and wood, demand and supply, environmental protection and economic prosperity, trade-offs that aren't always a good trade, but do raise this final question. Are we willing to pay the true price of taking our forest to market? What is the public forest for sale? At what cost? And can we afford it economically and ecologically? Such questions are the stuff of struggles, of public debate. Like or dislike the protest tactics, they've at least got us paying attention to these issues. Now it's up to us, we the public, to keep the public conversation going, learning about our forest, learning about science and economics, politics and ethics, learning to learn. And the only prerequisite for this public classroom is a bit of emphasis. Thanks for watching.
This big tree here is drawing a lot of the goodies out of the ground for the little trees to get. Because now the little trees will grow a lot faster too, once this mature tree is gone.
You don't want to stop and say grace over it or anything before you cut it, huh?
I never thought of it that way, no.
How many trees a day do you cut?
You know, basically around 70.
Well, here's one more.
Okay.
Have at it.
You wonder what the damn forest is going to look like 100 years from now with all these pockmarks.
Every stand of timber you look at, no matter how beautiful it is a result of timber harvesting.
I was walking along in the Shawnee so green, happened upon this god-awful scene. Area so suited for songbird flight, with stumps and brambles, it's time to fight.
It's time to fight now, it's time to fight. No more compromises, no more sleepless nights. Youth needs her freedom, stand in the light. Praise the hardwoods, it's time to fight.
How deep are you?
Up to the necks.
Pretty deep.
We're in up to our necks.
What can you say to those people who don't have any trust that now they're going to turn around and do things right?
Well, the first thing I'd say is watch what we do rather than what we say. They have a right to expect good stewardship of their lands. And I would say they're going to have just a little bit of patience, because the proof of the pudding, so to speak, is in what happens on the land.
So why should we believe that this new perspective is going to be anything except a slight change in semantics and the rhetoric in order to continue to circumvent the will of the people and to violate both the letter and the spirit of the law? We don't trust the bastards. It's that simple.
In light of the present unprofitability of the timber sales, we would like to respectfully request that you immediately suspend all pending timber sales and the timber sales preparation activities in the Shawnee National Forest until the conclusion of the land and resource management planning process. Thank you very much for your consideration for our request. We look forward to the favor of your response. Who do you think this is signed by? Joe Glisson? Bill Cronin? Jan Thomas? No, folks, this is signed by your representatives. This is signed by Glenn Pritchard. This is signed by the rest of the Illinois delegation. These are your elected officials asking the National Forest Service to stop the cutting and listen to what the people say. I can't believe we're still killing our forests as the hole in the ozone warms us. I just can't stand the sound of a tree crashing down, and gotta hope now that I never will.
Instead of just going in and taking a 2-acre area and just cutting everything down to 11 inches.
There were people that have called and wanted me to stop the protesting. I say, I can't stop protesting, nor should I. That's part of the system. Folks have a right to say whatever they want to say in this government. You can't do that.
Howdy, this is not the morning news. We have a show called Emphasis. Well, there's a Shawnee. Is everybody from some other forest besides yourself? Mark Twain, I noticed you earlier.
Mark Twain, Animals Girl.
The three of you? Oh, well, then you're sort of locals in a way, huh? Were you here last year? Were you involved in this detail?
If you want to talk to somebody, you'll have to get a hold of Miss Mumford and talk to her.
Well, I've been talking to Tom Haggerty and Rod Salee and the
Well, we're telling you, you'll have to talk to Miss Mumford now. She's the one doing PR here.
No.
Okay?
Can't even talk to you about the preparations you made here?
No comment.
Now here we are going to be out in the woods tomorrow. Is this what they had in mind about
being out in the woods? Yeah, they'd have to tell you that.
Well, see, that's the kind of question I want to ask one of these people. Can we talk to the people out on the line today?
No.
Why not?
Because they're there for safety reasons, and because we don't want them distracted from their job.
Can you say what other forests, for instance, are being represented here?
No, but there are people from other national forests that are here to help us.
How about numbers?
No, I do not have the numbers.
How about costs?
I don't have the total costs either. We won't know that, of course, until it's all over.
Golly, I don't know. I mean, no offense, Mayor, we all got our jobs to do. If you're the information officer, every question I've asked, you don't have the information.
I can't predict what someone else is going to do any more than you can predict what they're going to do.
Well, I'm not asking predictions. I mean, I'm asking information questions about costs, about plans.
I don't know the costs because, obviously, things are still happening.
The trash is a lot.
You plan on getting arrested?
Oh, I insist on it.
I tried before.
Yeah, he did the best he could. Buried himself in the road up to his neck, and they ran the other way.
Why is getting
They ain't
arrested?
gonna run tomorrow.
Why is getting arrested important?
It's important. It's important right now because actually before last summer when all that was going on, we were involved in that lawsuit, and we found out after the fact kind of that we weren't supposed to be doing things like that because we could jeopardize our lawsuit. Well, that's over, and I don't know. Well, Joe and I've talked about this quite a bit. We've been very involved in this whole thing from day one, and it's just there's other people that have been arrested and put their bodies on the line, and it's just right that we do.
But of course, the whole basis is the principal philosophy of Martin Luther King is that the way to call attention to an injustice is to break the law civilly, calmly, non-violently. And as a result of that, you suffer personal consequences, and that calls attention to the entire injustice that's being perpetrated. And it gets people's attention when you're willing. I mean, a lot of people laugh. We've been laughing about going to jail because you got to laugh about it. But I told Sheriff Kilquist out there yesterday when he made some remark about trying to blow off the fact that some of these people have been arrested, you know, that's over, it's no big deal. And I said, Sheriff, you just do not realize what you're talking about. You can blow it off because you're in control of the jail. But it is not a minor inconvenience to be handcuffed and physically removed and taken to a jail and being physically stripped and searched and incarcerated. That's not a minor inconvenience. That's a serious consequence of your action. And I told him that I didn't appreciate him trying to make light of it, that he should give us more respect than that, because it is a damn lousy feeling to be in jail.
The sale area is down here too?
No. Well, yeah, it's all the sale area, but the actual cutting areas are going to be up in here.
But what would be actual public closure?
Right, yeah, like from about here over is closed. It's time for me to get arrested at Fairview.
If there weren't a bunch of cameras around, do you think there'd be 100 people at the gate tomorrow?
I think so. I think the way it is right now, at the point we're at right now on this whole thing, that the media coverage is really secondary. It's more, a lot of it has to do with people knowing that other people support what they're doing. And, you know, it's hard to keep fighting a battle if you don't think you have any support. Because so many times you feel like you're out there and it's like, why am I bothering?
I think at this point in time, people feel that this is a line drawn in the sand, and everybody's daring each other to cross it. I asked East Perry and the Forest Service if, recognizing that the letter of the law is on their side, but would they consider, in compliance with the spirit of the law, since the new forest management plan has the 3/5 acre gap harvestation method as the method for the next 10 to 15 years on the forest, would they consider utilizing that on this cut? And they indicated to me that they would not.
Well, our main objection to the law, there are so many, I would put three different categories. One is the economic. This is going to be probably the most costly timber sale in the history of the eastern region. Two, biology. This area is essential to the survival of the neotropical songbirds and other forest-dwelling species whose habitat is dwindling throughout the entire North American continent. And finally, and most importantly, we feel that this sale should not proceed because it is unpopular. And ultimately, in a democracy, that is the test. That is the most significant, most important criterion by which a timber sale should be judged. Does it meet the best wishes of the American people? And in this case, there's no question but that it does not. Right now, the Shawnee is at the cutting edge of the new democracy movement, if you will, that is sweeping public participation in the management of the public forests. What the Forest Service is doing here on the Fairview is very much like what the KGB attempted to do in the Soviet Union. It's a coup. Coup is from the French word for cut. They are trying to get in and cut these trees before the will of the people is expressed through legislation currently pending in Congress that would prohibit this very sale. The Forest Service is out of control.
We think you're stupid! We think you're stupid!
You gonna move in this morning?
We sure are. We're ready.
What do you think of all this?
It's crazy, but you know, they can have a right to express their opinion, but they don't have a right to stop us.
Why does it have to start today, Brian?
It's got to start sooner or later, and we've waited a number of years on this, and we're not waiting no longer. We waited till after the 15th, like Congressman Bouchard asked us to, and you know, it's after the 15th, and we're ready to cut it.
We think you're stupid! We think you're stupid!
They've asked us to wait, you know, a number of times. They've asked us to wait. You know, we waited for the law cases. We waited for them to appeal to the Supreme Court. We waited for the 15th. We've been waiting and waiting, and we've got to start sooner or later.
We're not here because we think they're stupid. We're here because we want to protect these trees.
I'm also here because I think.
Well.
We have dual motives here.
Leave your hands off there.
Hands off
So wait, and you got an idea?
Hands off there. Hands off there.
Did you give them any instructions about how to deal with these folks?
Yeah.
What did you tell them?
We're not going to do. It's the law enforcement's job to remove them. We're not going to do nothing. We're not going to get physical with them unless we are physically attacked.
Speak to us, John!
We're all here because we share one thing in common. It's love for the Shawnee National Forest.
Right on.
We're here to be non-violent, but to speak out as citizens of Jackson County in the United States. And those of you who have the commitment, you best be ready to go to jail. Sheriff Kilquist gave me the opportunity to speak to you here, and I'm going to be arrested when I get through. Thank you all for coming. Please stay and fight. Thank you all.
Save the Shawnee! Save the Shawnee!
I am willing to be arrested because I think this is an outrage, and I am.
Sir, you had 3 warnings. Under arrest.
We love you, Joe!
The timber industry.
We're looking right now at criminal trespass to state-supported, federal state-supported property. And basically what we're doing, we're offering these people a chance to be released on a notice to appear with no bond. They won't be taken down in handcuffs. They won't have to be booked in at this time. But in return, we are asking for them to sign an agreement that they will leave the area immediately and that they will not come back for the 3 weeks that the Forest Service is timbering in here. We're trying to be nonviolent. You know, we're trying to help these people out too. You know, we respect some of the things that they're doing and some of the things that they stand for. Again, trying to get the situation taken care of here in an amicable manner is what everybody wants.
We got some surprises for them yet. There's still some things they're going to run into before they get through here today. There's more people here than they realize.
If it had to be, it went probably as well as it could have. I wish there could have been some way to put things on hold for a while, but obviously that didn't happen.
You're pleased with the way things turned out today?
Well, I'm not pleased, but I'm pleased nobody got hurt. I'm pleased that the law enforcement officials acted, I think, professionally. I'm pleased that the groups that were here were nonviolent in their protest. They've exercised their freedom to assemble. They've exercised their freedom of speech. They've exercised their freedom to petition their government for a redress of their differences. This is, after all, what we're about.
If it becomes necessary to come back, we'll come back. But hopefully other people will take our place. How many got arrested here this morning so far? I mean, look at this. It's a 75-pound woman over here, handcuffed in the back. That's justice right there, folks.
All right.
Okay. We're up on top of the hill.
I want to give Fairview to you and all the children.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I love you.
Yeah, we brought one.
Promised in here in court. There's a date and time on that.
Are there people back there? Are there protesters back there?
There are people back there. I don't know what their intent is. I don't know what their purpose is.
We heard on the scanner that somebody was hurt pretty badly out here. What happened?
I don't have any information on
Somebody
that.
hit by a Forest Service truck?
I don't have any information on that.
I would like to request that I go down there and witness for the public what's going on.
Okay, what I would suggest to you is that you're going to have to get a permit, and the way you get a permit is you have to go back to Murfreesboro Ranger Station and get your permit.
That's under the circumstances.
That blocking the
It's not going to get me down there to see what these people want to see. I'm not a protester. I'm not here to block any sessions. I'm here to report for the public what is happening down there that they are concerned about. As the officer in charge, I request that you allow me press pools. I mean, that happened in the Gulf. Send a press pool of one and a camera in there to see what's happening.
As soon as Mary comes back, you can make your request to her.
What's going on, Mary? Okay. We have had an individual that claimed to have been hit by an East Perry pickup truck. He also...
He claimed there was no Forest Service people there?
He claimed that he was hit by a pickup truck. East Perry claims they did not hit anyone.
You heard?
Now, that's all I can say right now.
I've badly heard it. I will repeat to you the request I made to Officer Sixkiller. I would like to go in there as a representative of this press. A press pool to go in there to see what's going on since you won't let us.
The forest supervisor is the only one who can authorize entrance into the closed area.
Then why isn't he here? He's not here. The situation is here. My job is to cover the news, which is down
Are there any
there.
questions about this? The ambulance is coming out. You'll need to clear out of the way.
In other words, we can't cover the news. You are preventing us from doing our job.
Were there any broken bones that you could cover?
Keep coming. Who is it? Who is it? Where are you taking them? We're going to Murfreesboro. What happened to them? I don't know.
Can you tell us who it is?
Friends, I just wanted to bring to your attention a little something that happened in Indiana yesterday. We had a little press conference in front of the Bedford Forest Service office of the Wayne Hoosier National Forest, at which we called for an independent investigation of the circumstances surrounding the deliberate running over of Chris Van Dalen in the forest of Shawnee in the Fairview timber sale area.
Describe in your own words what happened that day.
Well, basically, we were there in the woods waiting for the log trucks to come down, and when they did come, we came out of the woods, let everyone know that we were there, and when we came out, the whole convoy came to a halt quickly. The red truck at the front stopped, and everyone behind. We came out and stepped onto the road. Was surprised that everyone stopped, and then looked around for a moment, picked up a log that I was going to use to make it more difficult for them to remove me from the road, and walked to the side of Brian Understall's truck and placed myself underneath it. After a couple of seconds, I mean, as I approached the truck, I made eye contact with him in his rearview mirror. Then I placed myself under his truck, and within a few seconds, he, from a stop, spun out in the gravel and drove over my upper torso.
We got people here that can articulate this position. Just, you know, we aren't a bunch of hippies running around acting like crazy people, like they keep trying to portray us. You know, they constantly trying to zero in on how we dress, how we look, just because we don't, adhere to middle-class dress codes, that whole bullshit, you know. I'm just tired of it.
Congressman told me that WSIU, PBS, as well as any other representative of WSIU, was not on the original list.
The TV station is not a daily. Our thought initially was let want information that can get news out to the people on a daily basis. When he asked, we said no problem.
WSIU TV has in the past done documentaries on this. We've been at Fairview all along. Why were we not thought of?
And you were thought of. There's still others we know that will want to get in the sale area. We know you had a request in, and in fact intended to honor that.
The original suggestion for a pool on the first day of cutting came from me personally.
Oh, I did. I was not aware of that.
Now, by cutting only the larger mature trees, is that kind of like high grading? You know, just taking the best.
If you did that throughout the whole stand, it certainly would be.
This group might want to come down here and join up with Congressman Bouchard's group.
Producer. Provider. These are the two that we just got done looking at. Well, the second opening that we looked at there was actually estimated to be one of the largest openings. And it's obviously smaller than the first one we looked at. So that acreage figure there is not very reliable.
Well, Steve, just, you know, see, I think that's a lot, what you described as 7/10 of an acre there, I think that's much larger than 7/10 of an acre.
Well, I measured it out.
Well, I got a yard that's a half an acre, and that's at least 3 times as big as my yard.
The second one did look bigger than the first one to
It
me,
did.
Because there were the two
Second one
halves.
looked bigger than the first one?
See, Steve, this may sound trivial. I don't mean to be trivial, but this, in essence, is one of the major points of the debate. Because, exactly, if the Forest Service is going to develop a forest management plan with the recommendation of 3/5 acre cuts, okay, then that's exactly what the cut should be, at least no greater than that, you know. And if we're saying that we've got cuts here in Fairview that really are different than the size that the plan calls for or whatever, you know, I have a concern about that.
There's never going to be canopy like this again.
You have trees like this in Pennsylvania?
We got some, and the Forest Service is doing the same thing.
So why come to Illinois?
Well, came out here just to see firsthand what's going on out here, because I know what's going on out there, and the issues are the same. And
Wish you've gone a little farther here than in Pennsylvania?
Well, right now the conflict is probably a little hotter here.
Bernard Hill deserves to have some peace. It's all that we have left out of an already stripped county. We just want peace.
Okay, I'm gonna get out here and see what Mr. Castano's got to say.
He keeps getting higher.
The yellow marks on these trees in Alexander County mean that they are the next to go.
For 2 summers, several weekends in a row, there's a big story out at Fairview. Are you ready to start all that over again here at Bernard Hill?
It's gonna have to take a look at it, because we were really into covering the last Fairview, the big thing that went on, and it was spectacular. I mean, people getting arrested all over the place.
Makes for good TV.
It makes for good TV, but I mean, you know, people ask, you know, is it gonna be like this every single time there's a cut? Is it gonna be like that all the time? And we just haven't, you know, assessed that yet. We haven't looked at it, because you know, people, you know, we're just hitting everybody over the head with this, you know, forest issue all the time.
Does the public have the patience? Do the media have the patience? Will they be showing up every time you call a
We'll sure put it through the
press conference?
test. Everyone came today, and Bernard Hill's farther away for the press than Fairview was. It's a dramatic story. It's continuing to unfold. And we're just, you know, players in this movement. We're out on the cutting edge of the movement, though, and that's very exciting, because when we do see the agency's demise, it'll mean a big victory party. It's going to be fantastic.
Something's happening here. What it is, I don't think anybody sees it clear. That line's done been drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Now stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Images like these are common on the local news here in southern Illinois as protesters become more and more vocal about the environment. This protest last month to stop the East Perry Lumber Company from logging in the Shawnee National Forest at Fairview is an example of how emotional the issue is. Members of environmental groups such as Earth First and RACE, the Regional Association of Concerned Environmentalists, are two of the more radical groups involved in the issue, and they say they will go to great lengths to stop the logging.
Speak out as citizens of Jackson County in the United States. Those of you who have the commitment, you best be ready to go to jail.
The effort to stop clear cutting is supported by Congressman Glenn Pichard and Senator Paul Simon, but members of RACE are unhappy with some of the compromises being made in the federal government. They say they just want the logging stopped.
We want to run them out of the state of Illinois. I'm making an appeal to all private woodlot owners. Don't sell your private lands to East Perry. They're not good neighbors.
Tensions run high between the Forest Service and the protesters, but the Sheriff's Department says the August 26th protest could have been worse.
I wish it could have been easier. However, I am glad that it was as nonviolent and went as well, I hope, for both parties as it did.
They wanted to stop the trucks from coming through, but they couldn't. Did they really believe they had a chance?
I had hoped. Maybe not totally. Maybe I didn't really believe that we could, completely stop them. I had hopes.
This is what the protesters are trying to save. These trees cover over 250,000 acres of southern Illinois. Members of RACE say they want to save the country from complete industrialization and that this is what they need to do to accomplish that. But the time and effort that goes into environmentalism means sacrifices. Tomorrow I'll show you who these people are and how their lives have been changed in Part 2 of Voices for the Trees. For the SIU Night Report, I'm Michelle Durfee.
We have 0.1% of the state preserved from industrial use.
Saving the state from industrialization. Environmental groups like RACE say obtaining this goal is worth enormous sacrifice. RACE, the Regional Association of Concerned Environmentalists, is one of the key groups involved in the fight to stop clear-cutting in the Shawnee National Forest. Members of RACE started to fight logging when the forests around their homes were cut.
Their favorite spots were clear-cut, and at this time they were doing very big clear-cuts. They were like 40 acres. And people got really upset about it, and the neighbors got together basically and started ACE. And
this is our forest, and we don't want to cut.
How long have you been involved with this?
Been involved from the very start, and I'm going to stay with it to the end until this is over.
Others just found the group's enthusiasm contagious.
But then I also realized the Shawnee Forest was getting cut up, and I found out that some of the most important people around were trying to stop it, and I just tried to help them by joining with them.
Now, saving the forest is an emotional and personal issue to people like Jan Wilder Thomas, and some of the protesters put themselves in danger by planting themselves in front of logging trucks or chaining themselves to trees. A new tactic employed during the fight to save Fairview was a hunger strike.
And if we can organize a nationwide hunger strike for the Shawnee, which we have the capability to do with our contacts, we will capture the attention of Congress.
Grace tries to fight the loggers at every level, from civil lawsuits to legislation, but they say the rallies bring in the most media attention. Hopes are high, but how much is it going to take?
Well, probably some more people have to get arrested, and probably some have to get run over again.
Randall Thomas and his wife Jan know the price of the fight better than most.
It's become a major part of our lifestyle for our family. She is an emotional person, and she was up front begging him not to come in, and ended up getting herself arrested.
Randall Thomas and his family live on close to 20 acres of land in the southern part of Pope County. Here, every aspect of their lifestyle is tied to their fight to stop clear-cutting in the Shawnee.
I was a carpenter and worked as a carpenter full-time in Paducah, Kentucky, and kept working through the beginning of this issue, and had, you know, a hope for a nice house and stuff, but I give that up.
Living on less than $5,000 a year isn't easy, but the family is proud to say they haven't needed public aid.
This spring, it was a lot of fruit. We had apples all over the trees, and grapes and plums, and I started getting ready for the hunger strike this spring.
Jan teaches the children at home. She says the extra time together is important.
And we're learning sign language together. Science, we do wheatgrass beds and sprout gardens, and get to incorporate our lifestyle with our homeschooling.
Her oldest daughter, Sage, appears to be following in her mother's footsteps.
Sage has taken several environmental trips with me. In fact, she's going with me to Boulder to the SEEK conference coming up October 4th.
But the alternative lifestyle is difficult for many to accept.
It's a shock to my parent system, because my lifestyle is an absolute betrayal of the style I was brought up in.
The focal point of their lives right now is the forest, and their lost battles chronicled on television news can be painful.
Continue to try, at a minimum,
my children have seen me do all kinds of things in this movement, but they've all stemmed from a basic incentive to do something, knowing that if we don't do what we're doing, nobody else is going to fill in the gap.
And so for their children's sake, for their future, the Thomases say they'll keep...
Less timber harvesting, but adding oil drilling. John Warwick reports.
I tell you that the public input did make a difference in this plan.
Forest Service officials say the new Shawnee management plan is a fair compromise between those who want expanded timber harvesting in the forest and those who want none at all. The plan bans clear-cutting and reduces the amount of acreage that can be harvested from 60 to 22%. About 3.5 million board feet will be cut each year. Environmentalists say it's still too much.
We can't afford to sacrifice any more rare forest museums.
Another part of the plan is almost sure to be controversy as well. For the first time, the Forest Service will allow oil drilling in the Shawnee.
Forest officials say 90% of the forest will be up for lease.
The people of Illinois and our elected representatives have stated we don't want our big tree habitat to be sacrificed for the shipping pallet industry, the raw log export, and the mining industries.
Protesters say the U.S. Forest Service operates in blatant disregard of federal environmental law. Forestry officials say they're just doing the job the government pays them to do. Susan Risden reports.
Demonstrators took their protest to the Vienna Forest Service office. They are demanding all remaining ancient forests be protected, starting with the Shawnee National Forest.
This is where the timber sale planters have been planting timber sales in the Shawnee, and our message to them is to stop planting timber sales. Your timber sale program is dead because of the waste that you've already given us in the Shawnee. You have a legacy of waste, and we're not going to tolerate any longer.
A pallet a day takes the forest away. A pallet a day takes the forest away.
Environmentalists say the next planned cut is at Hayes Bay in the Shawnee Forest, and they claim 60% of the timber will be used to make pallets that end up in the landfill.
I think more and more people are becoming aware that our earth is a finite resource and that we can't continue to throw away life for small, short-term corporate profits.
We want them out. We want them to stop cutting out our national forest. We want our public lands back now.
Some of the local groups act like Forest Service people are trying to decimate the forest, and really everybody that works for the Forest Service is also an environmentalist.
Jan Wilder Thomas of Brookport was accused of striking a Jackson County Sheriff's deputy during a protest. She was acquitted after a 2-day jury trial in Murfreesboro. Wilder Thomas was one of 6